Hey guys, my name is Moon and welcome back for more Higurashi When They Cry, Chapter 5, Meakashi. So, last time we reached the part where the Watanagashi festival happened, right? With Keiichi and the gang, all of them. So, yeah, we also saw that Shion was hearing something, right? Remember in chapter 2, she said that she heard some thumps. She said that to Keiichi, right? And then Keiichi was like, I don't know. I didn't hear anything like that. But yeah, for Shion, she heard that. And it's kind of hard to say what that is, right? Because she was the only one who could hear it. But Rena did say she heard something like that. And she said that Satoshi also heard something like that, right? So let us continue and let's see what happens today. Because yeah, the day after the Watanagashi festival on chapter 2, it seemed like Mion was not Mion anymore, right? So maybe here they're gonna show us. Okay, my relatives gathered at the Sonozaki house after the festival to have a little party. I mingled with my uncles and had fun. I was trying to get rid of my eerie memories of the ritual storehouse. Mion was acting as a successor, so I tried to stay away from her. I'm sure she would feel weird if I talked to her in a formal way. In consideration of the hag's old age, we ended the party around 11 p.m. We all helped to clean up with the women washing the dishes in the kitchen and the men folding the tables and putting them away in a storeroom. It only took about 30 minutes and everyone left one after the other. By then, Mion was no longer acting as a Sonozaki's successor and was back to being her normal self. Maybe I overexerted a little? I was lying on the tatami floor. Kase asked me if I could get in the car, so I told him I'd rather not move anymore.
おねえ、今日泊まってってもいい？ここで寝ちゃいたい。バッチャに見つかると怒られるよ。で、それよりシオン、明日は学校じゃないの？明日は開校記念日だからいいの。あんたの学校、開校記念日って年に何回あるわけ？まあ、いっか。じゃあ、笠井さん。シオンは今夜はうちで預かります。
わかりました。ではよろしくお願いいたします。
ほら、シオン起きて。ここで寝てるとバッチャに怒られるって。ほら、肩を貸すから奥に行こう。私の布団貸してあげるから。ありりー、おねー。
Oh nay. My alter ego told me that I'm in a demon's stomach. I wouldn't have woken up if I hadn't heard that voice. But when I stop, he always walks one extra step. I might not have woken up at all. Page 165. I didn't remember much after that. I was probably brought to Mion's room and immediately crawled into the futon. After a while, Mion got her futon ready next to me, turned the lights off, and went to sleep. At least that's what I thought. I got up and turned the lights on. Mion's futon was empty. The futon felt cold. So Mion must have left a while ago. Did she go to the bathroom? No, the closest bathroom was right there down the hallway. The light in the bathroom was off. So where did she go? The ticking of the clock was loud and annoying in this silence. The hands pointed to a little before 3 a.m. So I was left alone all of a sudden in this late night. I felt this eeriness of this ritual storehouse coming back to me after almost managing to forget it in the ruckus earlier. I tried to sense my surroundings in this house, so there shouldn't be an eerie atmosphere, strange noises, or footsteps. I stepped out into the freezing cold hallway to look for Mion. When I did, I immediately noticed the light coming from one of the nearby rooms. The room belonged to the hag. The hag went to sleep early and woke up early. She was very strict about her bedtime, so it was strange to see her on in the middle of the night. I could hear voices too. Those voices belonged to the hag and to Mion, so they're talking. I creeped up to the room and listened to their conversation. Since it was the middle of the night, I could hear the words very clearly.
しゃあもねえやんな。あんの赤いのもちょい出張りすぎやったんや。
まあね。お社様のお怒りに触れたんだから仕方ないしね。
Mia's voice sounded as cold as the one I'd heard down in the torture room, so I held my breath. Yeah, she's very serious though.
警察は調べとっちゅうとろんが、すっとろん間違いなあかんねん。
Oh, I guess they're talking about Takano and Tomitake, right?
多分ね。高野さんだろうね。
My heart almost stopped. Oyashiro-sama got angry. The police are investigating. It's probably Takano-san. And what day it was today? Those words told me that something was happening. My teeth started to chatter, so I desperately tried to stop them. I felt like my body was swelling up, so I could no longer hear as well. Calm down and breathe. Listen more carefully. According to Mion, the hag's conversation, another incident definitely took place. The victims were Takano-san and Tomitake-san. From what I could tell, both Mion and the hag thought it made sense that whatever it was happened to them. No. I needed to think more calmly. They did say they deserve it for making Oyashiro-sama angry. Did they say Takano-san and Tomitake-san made Oyashiro-sama angry? How did they make Oyashiro-sama angry? They knew. My body started to shake. They knew we snuck into the ritual storehouse. Then, would that mean Keiichi and I were also subject to Oyashiro-sama's curse? Suddenly, a phone rang. The phone was by the front door. The front door was opposite of the hag's room, farther down the hall. So the ringing echoed throughout the long hallway. It sounded so eerie, almost like it was coming from hell. That was when I felt someone behind me. Of course, there was nobody there when I turned around. But there was someone there a moment ago. I didn't know if it was Satoshi-kun. I didn't sense any emotion, so I couldn't tell. I also didn't know how long it had been there. It was if somebody was watching me listen in on their conversation. That was a feeling I got. It couldn't be Satoshi-kun. Satoshi-kun would never be that intimidating or scary. My mind turned all red, like it was suffused with blood.
みーちゃんにはない？
Rena?
ひたひたと。
Oh, Rena, this is the conversation I guess they had back then.
ずっと足音がついてきて、夜は枕元にまで立たれて見下ろされる経験。
I remember what Ren and Ryugi had said on that rainy day.
そうならばみーちゃんは大丈夫。お社様には怒られない。
If Oyashiro-sama wasn't angry, nobody would follow me. So, what did this mean? Ever since we snuck into the shrine storage, something has been following me. So calm down. That's right, Rena wasn't talking about me. She was talking about Satoshi-kun. That's what happened to Satoshi-kun.
サトシ君が体験していることは、すべてお社様のたたりの前触れなの。
That's right, that's why he encountered the curse of Oyashiro-sama.
誰かが遠くからじっと伺っている。誰かがずっとつけてくる。
A creepy feeling crawled up and spread across my back.
誰かがいつも自分のすぐ後ろから見ている。
Then it watches from right behind you.
やがて足音は常に自分とずれて一つ余計に聞こえるようになるの。
I swallowed loudly. It's almost as though Ren Ryugu was predicting what would happen to me. Had Rena been talking about Satoshi-kun back then? Or had she actually been talking about me?
やがて後ろのそれは自分の家の中にまでついてくるようになる。そしてお布団に入って明かりを消してもずっと枕元から見下ろしてるの。ただただ黙ってじーっと。
I knew by now that there was no mistake. No matter how I looked at it, she had been talking about me. Yes, me. It had been about me. The curse of Oyashiro-sama. What is the curse of Oyashiro-sama? That was when I actually felt something for real. Oh my god, someone grabbed my collar. No. Okay, no voice came out. Dude, if I'm experiencing this, I would go crazy as well. I mean, anybody would go crazy. I wanted to scream, but all I could do was to open and close my mouth as if something was stuck in my throat. Oh, it was Mion. Her eyes is like this. She looked even colder than how she'd look in the underground torture room. It only made sense that she'd come out in the hallway to answer the phone. I tried to come up with an excuse. However, the way Mion looked at me was so cold. Even if I really had run into her by accident, I could tell by the look in her eyes that she wouldn't believe me. I felt cold sweat all over my body, so I couldn't even move my fingers.
ごめん。
I apologized. I could have said something to get myself out of the situation, but the apology came out first. But Mion didn't appear to hear me. She walked to the front door, still holding my collar. The phone was still ringing. A normal person doesn't usually let a phone ring so long at this time of night. So the phone call itself, it didn't seem real to me. Mion picked up the phone.
ミオンです。そうですか。わかりました。そちらの対応はよろしくお願いします。それから一切の口封じをよろしくお願いします。ええ。では。
Goodbye. Mion put down the phone after a short conversation. What did she mean, make sure nobody talks about this? Who called anyway? Mion put her forehead to mine and spoke to me. Oh!
聞いてた？
Jesus. Which conversation was she asking me about? Okay, I didn't expect this, honestly. Well, she had to be talking about the one with the hag. If I said yes, what would happen to me?
何のことかわかんない。
Mion pulled my collar, pressed her nose on mine, and continued to speak.
聞こえた通りです。富武さんと高野さんがお社様のたたりに遭われました。本当にお気の毒なことです。
It was like I was talking to myself in a mirror. But what I was saying in the mirror was ever so cold.
おねえ、お社様のたたりって何です？富武さんは自らの手で喉をかきむしってお亡くなりになりました。高野さんは遠くの山奥でドラム缶に詰められて焼き殺されたそうで、実にお気の毒です。
Tomitake's son clawed out his own throat until he died? What? Takano-san was burned to death in an oil drum. Wait, what? I felt something furry crawl up my spine. Furry? I also felt like my stomach was turning upside down. I didn't feel any strength in my legs. If Mion let go of my collar, I'd probably collapse on the spot.
なんでそんな死に方したのかな。わかりませんか、シオン。
I'm asking you because I don't know.
わかんないよ。理由なんて一つしかないじゃないですか。
Okay, please don't talk as if I already know the answer.
何の理由かな。
My heart was pounding. I felt that my next breath would be so bloody and hot that I'd choke on it.
そんなこともわかんないのですか。
It's because they made Oyashiro-sama angry. The first year, it was the manager of the damn construction site. The second year, it was a traitor to the village. Third year, it was a pacifist. Fourth year, it was the relatives of the traitors. I'd always thought the victims were people who had something to do with the damn conflict. Yeah, I just realized that as well, right? All of the, yeah, I mean, they said back then they had connections to each other, right? But now, it's Takano-san and Tomitake. Since I didn't do anything against the village during the damn conflict, I assumed I was safe. I should have known. I should have known everything would be the curse of Oyashiro-sama. I knew Oyashiro-sama's anger was the curse of Oyashiro-sama. I knew Oyashiro-sama would get angry if I snuck into the ritual storehouse. But since I wasn't held responsible in any way for the damn conflict, I never thought I would be a victim of the curse. Did I ever think that there would be an incident on the 5th year? Did I ever? Okay, Tomitake-san snuck into the warehouse and clawed at his own throat until he died. Takano-san was burned to death in an oil drum. It must be a lie. It couldn't be true. Even if it was forbidden, it was just a space for storing some old torture implements. How could they how could they be killed for just sneaking in there? Especially in such gruesome ways. But I thought about it again and realized that those people were absolutely capable of doing things like that. The main Sonozaki family was capable of it. The Sonozaki family had been pulling the strings behind the series of mysterious deaths. They could do it. The Sonozaki family even kidnapped the grandson of the Minister of Construction during the damn conflict. So yes, they could do it. The Sonozaki family made Satoshi-kun disappear completely. They could do it. Mion leaned against me before falling onto the cold hallway floor. She collapsed rather violently. I usually didn't go to sleep with my stun gun, but since I was too tired and sleepy to get ready for her bed, I still had it on me. I had my stun gun on me. I finally understood. I didn't know who killed him exactly, whose idea it was, or who ordered it. I didn't even know who was actually involved. But Mion and the hag knew everything. Satoshi-kun, now I finally know. I know what to do, or what I need to do. I will settle the score for you, Satoshi-kun. I will avenge you. I won't be killed like you, Satoshi-kun. I walked into the hag's room. She was sitting up to take some medicine. Her back was turned to me. Mion and I are twins. If I acted like her, the hag wouldn't notice the difference. I didn't think she ever suspected me. So I put my stun gun to her neck, and then I pulled the trigger. I heard an indescribable electrical sound, and the hag's light went out. She fell in a twisted position. I didn't know how long it would take for a person to regain their freedom of movement after getting knocked out with a stun gun. so I had to restrain them before they woke up. I was unbelievably calm. It's starting, man. The key to the underground torture room was in the forbidden drawer that only the head of the family can access, so Mion had told me about this once. I never looked for the drawer before, but I found it exactly where I thought it would be. The key was on the keychain with several of its sisters. Each key had a little plaque on it that said what it was used for. They were all in Mion's handwriting. She was an idiot for being so conscientious, but it sure helped me out. I put the keychain in my pocket and headed to the outdoor storeroom to find a cart. I found a large flashlight there as well. Don't they have like maids or people here in this house and no one even noticed? That's what Shion is doing right now. There was a strap on the flashlight so I could put it on my shoulder. That way I'd have both hands free to carry Mion and the hag. I loaded Mion and her grandma onto the cart and carried them to the underground torture room. So I was prepared to use a stun gun again if they woke up while I was working. But it was more powerful than I imagined and the hag showed no signs of waking. This was a stun gun Kasa especially ordered for me when I told him I wanted the powerful one. I remembered him telling me that it was an illegally modified stun gun and that I should never use it for fun. I used my flashlight to find the light switch. I found it easily and turned it on. All the lights went on in the basement. There was now illumination. It was very dim. I moved quickly so as to finish what I needed to do before they woke up. I decided to put Mion in a cell beyond the torture room. The lights in the torture room were so bright that it was like daylight. There was a door there. I was fairly certain the cell's on the other side of that door. The proper key was here. The keys made a tinkling sound. I felt cold air coming through the gap in the floor. There must be a huge opening on the other side. I opened the door and I saw nothing but darkness. I felt along the wall to find a light switch. Also, we're here now. I turned the switch and the light bulbs lit up, revealing a huge rocky cave. It didn't look like a natural cave, it looked more like an air raid shelter. There were several hollow openings with bars across them. Those were the cells. I walked up to the closest cell and checked to see if it was strong enough to confine her. I pushed and pulled on the bars. I rammed against them with all my weight and decided they were perfectly sturdy. This was secure enough to be called a cell. So I opened up the lock and carried Mion in. I wasn't particularly strong, just average. I never thought I was strong enough to carry a whole person. But now I didn't need to pretend to be weak. I could easily lift and drag their bodies. So I put Mion in the cell. She seemed to moan a little. I didn't need to check to make sure. The effect of my stun gun was wearing off. So I closed the bars and turned the key in the lock and then ran to the hag, who must have been starting to wake up too. Unfortunately, there was no sign of her regaining consciousness. Maybe the difference in age had something to do with it. I looked for a table to restrain her on. I found a wheelchair with restraints for hands and feet, so I put the hag in it. Of course, she didn't resist, but her dead weight made it seem like she was a huge French doll, but one made of flesh. So I put her hands on the armrest and then restrained them at the wrist with the metal rings and hinges. I did the same with her feet. This must have been a wheelchair especially remodeled to restrain a person. Other than restraints, it was a regular wheelchair. I waited for the hag to wake up. I had so many things I wanted to ask her. I didn't think she'd answer honestly, but I had plenty of tools to make her talk. I was in no rush. When the hag had a concern, relatives took care of the problem. That was how it worked in the Sonozaki family. She was the leader of the family, so all the information they gathered would make its way to her. She must know everything that happened in Hinamizawa, including the curse of Oyashiro-sama. I heard a noise from the cell. So Mion must have woken up before the hag did. Speaking of the hag, she didn't seem like she was about to wake up anytime soon, but she was restrained, even if she did, so I had no need to fear. I left the hag there and headed for the cell.
シオン、これは何の真似ですか？
She talked like the successor, but she also sounded frightened. She obviously understood the situation she was in right now.
おはよう、ミオン。まさか自分が閉じ込められることになるとは思わなかった？園崎家当主代行として命じます。ここを開けな。声色に一つ凄みが欠けますね。当主様はもっと傲慢な言い方をしなきゃね。もっともそういう言い方ができたとしても、今のあんたは滑稽なだけなんだけどさ。
There was nothing funny about it, but I wanted to intimidate Mion. My laughter echoed throughout the cave. It was artificial and meaningless laughter. I heard it over and over as it echoed. It sounded as if I wasn't the only one laughing. I couldn't stand it, so I stopped. Silence filled the air. That silence almost hurt my ears, so I started to speak.
富武さんと高野さんが今年の犠牲になるとはね。思わなかった。高野さんのドラム缶に詰めて焼き殺したってのもなかなかやるね。ま、あの人はそういう死に方を自分で希望してたっぽいからね。
True.
結構満足してるかもよ。
Mion didn't say anything, she just stared at me to see how I'd proceed.
富武さんの自分で自分の喉を引き裂いたってのは何？凶器に駆り立てるような怪しいお薬でも注射したの？それともそういう死に方に見せるような拷問道具でもあるわけ？
Mion didn't reply. I was smiling boldly, but I became impatient and finally kicked the bars. It made a violent noise. Mion jumped as if she was kicked directly.
返事がないと退屈です。私を怒らせるとどんな得が？私が知るわけないでしょう。
Mion finally replied. She was odious, but at the same time sounded pitiful.
ねえ、ミオン。次期当主様。ここまで来ちゃったんだから教えてくださいな。
I had just too many things I wanted to ask her. I wanted to ask her about me, about the incident, about the curse, about Satoshi-kun. I didn't even know where to start. Before I asked her about those, I asked her one other thing.
私に対して反抗的な態度をとっても何の得にもならないこと、理解してますよね。
Mion glared at me silently. Because we were twins, I knew that was just a bluff.
もうここまでやっちゃった以上、私も引っ込みがつかないんで。お姉も私に容赦とか躊躇とかそういうものをあまり期待しない方がいいかもです。
Mion must have been feeling the cold sweat on her face. Although the light was dim, I could tell she was frightened.
じゃあ聞くよ。ひなみ沢村連続開始事件。通称お社様のたたり。これってどういう意味があるの？やっぱりダム戦争のけじめってやつ？私は多分そうだと思ってる。
Mion sounded a little confused, but she answered. I felt satisfaction now that we're communicating. I continued with a smile.
思ってるって言い方が少し頼りないね。そのあたりの事情は詳しくないの？シオンだって分かってるでしょ。 次期当主なんてバッチャの取り次ぎに過ぎないよ。
Yeah, right.
その当主様と意思を疎通させて以心伝心なのが次期当主様の役目でしょ。取り次ぎに過ぎないなんて信じると思う？いつも身近にいる私だってたまにバッチャが何を考えてるのかわからない時があるもん。何でもかんでも私が理解してるわけじゃない。じゃあお社様のたたりってのはあいつが全部独断で決めてるわけなんだ。次期当主様と相談して決めてるのかと思ったよ。やばい話は全部バッチャが一人で決めてる。私なんか預かり知る余地もない。でもばあさんの独断だとしたってあいつはあんたを介してやりとりしてるわけでしょ。そのあんたが何も知らないなんてあるはず。違うよ。私なんかを介していない。私にだってよくわからないんだけど、私が陽の部分を取り継いでるとしたら陰の部分を取り継いでる誰かがいると思う。誰？その影の部分の取り継ぎって。知らない。誰かを招いて話してるとことか電話をしているとことか見たことない？強いて言えば毎年お社様のたたりの時期になると連絡量がどっと増える相手ね。わかんない。心当たりなんかないよ。
Mion shook her head.
まあいいや。じゃあ質問を変えるね。今年のたたりの富武さんと高野さんはダム戦争に直接関係してないのになぜ犠牲に選ばれたの？やっぱり西宮殿に忍び込んだから？
And as soon as Mion heard the words ritual storehouse, her expression shifted.
西宮殿に？古手神社の西宮殿を犯したの？ありゃ。
Okay, she didn't actually know. Okay.
知ってるとばかり。そんなことをしたらバカ、当然だよ。
Mion muttered bitterly while shaking her head repeatedly. Yeah, I don't think Mion is lying here. I think she doesn't really know. Yeah, she just knew when she said it right now. Mion's reaction made me realize the true meaning of the forbidden storehouse for ritual implements. The ritual storehouse is a sacred building, so nobody can go inside. The curse will fall upon any who disobey. Any child would know that rule. However, just because they knew about it, it didn't mean that they all believed it. Although they were told that they would be cursed, most of the kids actually enjoyed hearing the stories. They simply didn't believe it was true. However, Mion's reaction told me it was absolutely was. If they actually did that, of course something would happen to them. She was saying that if someone snuck into the ritual storehouse, that the person should be killed.
私がこっちに帰ってきて以降、たまにミヨンとは認識が食い違いますね。そりゃ私だって西宮殿が迂闊に入っちゃやばいとこだってのは知ってますけど、あんな死に方しても当然だってほどやばいとは思わないんだけど。私たちだってその程度の認識じゃなかったでしたっけ？それはシオンがよく知らないだけだよ。すみませんね、よく知らなくて。説明をいただいてもよろしいですか？そりゃシオンの言う通り、子供の世界ではやばいとかたたりがあるとか言ったってどうせ迷信に過ぎないだろう。でも大人にバレたらかなり怒られるんだろうなって程度の認識だと思う。でもね、ひなみ沢の古老たちにとってはそんな甘いものじゃないの。
Mion explained to me how the elderly people blindly believe in Oyashiro-sama and how sacred the festivals are there to them. Or are to them. It's probably something the younger generations would never understand, but they're possessed by a very strong, deeply rooted devotion toward Oyashiro-sama. So Mion then went on to tell me about how sinful it was to violate the rule of the ritual storehouse. I just couldn't believe things like that were still going on even in the modern day. I couldn't even reply appropriately. But even if it was unbelievable, I couldn't ignore what I was hearing from my twin sister.
なるほどね。でもさ、ミオン。たたりで一人が死んだら、それを相殺する意味で一人を生贄にするのがルールじゃなかったっけ。生贄の死体は出ない。なのに今回は二人とも死体が出ちゃってるんだけど。そのあたりはどう見る？
Mion doesn't know that besides Sekano-san and Tomitaki-san, Eiji and I also snuck into the ritual storehouse. So I tried to lead her a little.
確かにおかしいね。高野さんの焼死体は見つかっちゃいけなかったってことなのかな。本当は高野さんは失踪ってことになるのがパーフェクトだったのかな。あるいは自信はないけど。何？根拠なんかいらないから言ってみてよ。怒らないから。
Mion hesitated a little first and then started to speak.
西宮殿に忍び込んだのは実は4人とか。それで？で、もう2人は生贄ってことで鬼隠しになってるんじゃないかな。
Okay. Mion's words were stuck in my head. If those two dead bodies were the result of the curse, then there should be 2 sacrifices to calm Oyashiro-sama's anger. The 4 of us snuck into the shrine together. It was a simple equation. Did that mean that Keiichi and I were in danger as well? I got drunk and fell asleep, and I decided to stay overnight. Was that because of the alcohol? Or did someone put a drug in my drink? It's not like me to get drunk and spend a night at the hag's house. So I wanted to forget about what happened in that eerie storehouse, so I drank too much. But it really was strange for me to get that drunk. Maybe it was a good thing I woke up in the middle of the night. I could have been the one to wake up in a cell. I don't know, maybe not. Sometimes it's hard to recognize danger when you avoid it accidentally. A part of me wanted to just laugh at the idea, but another part felt frightened that I was so close to being in Mion's position. If my thinking was correct, I wonder how Keiichi, my bar, was doing right now. I didn't see him in any of the cells, but that didn't guarantee his safety. Takano-san and Tomitaki-san had been executed. There was a possibility that Keiichi could already be dead. But just like what happened to Satoshi-kun, it might only happen after a few days. When the sun rose, I was going to pretend to be Mion and head to school. Okay, we got confirmation now. So it was Shion. After this night, it was Shion that went to all the events in the second chapter, right? It was all Shion pretending to be Mion. I was going to check if Keiichi, my bar, was safe. If he had already disappeared, the enemy would come after me next. I'd have to be a decoy for myself. But if he was still safe, I'd need to keep my eyes on him. I was sure the enemy would come after that scatterbrain. If I became Mion, Shion would disappear. The enemy would think Shion had already been demoned away and they'd concentrate on Keiichi. If nothing happened to Keiichi, that would be also fine. It proved that nothing would happen to me either. The hag was still sleeping in the wheelchair, so I was going to interrogate her, but actually, I wasn't expecting to learn that much. That woman or the woman who was also known as Empress Sonozaki. Empress Sonozaki. Probably wouldn't say a thing even if her fingers were cut off. Mion, her successor, was the complete opposite. She spoke readily but didn't know too much about anything. Mion had said she was only a messenger, and that someone else was taking care of problems on the underside. It was possible Mion had grown to be a good liar and that she tried to deceive me with a straight face. But at the same time, I could see the hag not letting Mion get involved in the underside of the village. If I were her, I wouldn't have used Mion for that either. Unlike me, Mion was a nice person. While there were only ones and zeros in the world, she believed there were numbers with decimal points. In other words, she could never be cruel. If the hag thought the same way as I do, it was very possible. The one who took care of the problems on the underside, X, was the one who actually governed the curse of Oyashiro-sama. If the hag became concerned about something, X would deal with it, either directly or indirectly. Or maybe the hag and X would discuss the details first. But did X really exist? I don't think so though. There's no X. If he did, his place in his village hierarchy was a lot more important than that of the successor, yes. Unlike Mion, who was too nice, he was discreet, cruel, and cunning. Furthermore, he was extremely close to the hag. Someone who would have a lot of contact with her just before it was time for the curse. Because of the way Tomitake-san died, it could be someone who regularly dealt with unusual drugs. He could be a member of a medical institution. What? Irie, okay. She's thinking of Irie. I was thinking of Irie, then she said it. The director of Irie Clinic. Irie though? Like we don't see Irie near the Sonozaki house ever. The director of the Irie Clinic, Irie. In this isolated village, Irie was famous for opening such a beautiful clinic and for working so hard for the villagers' sake. The villagers liked his mature personality and really respected him. Yeah, but then again, in chapter 3, right? Yeah, he was kind of suspicious there by the ending, right? He was talking to a lot of people and those guys in, I guess, the mountain dogs, what they were called, what were they called again? I forgot. There's nothing scarier than a doctor who was also a murderer. If Irie was the person behind the curse, all the mysterious deaths could be explained. However, there was only a slim chance of Irie being X. Can be, yes, can be. The main reason being that the hag wouldn't trust him. Like many of the elderly, the hag doesn't like young people, so I knew she'd never trust him because of his age. So who could she trust that is near her? The only one near her, I guess, is the mayor, right? His name Kimiyoshi? Furthermore, she had openly criticized his behavior among the relatives once. Although Irie was famous, he was an outsider after all. He wasn't born here. He tried to maintain a good relationship with the villagers as the director of the clinic, but that was just on the surface. I couldn't even imagine the hag telling him about her worries or about the village's underside. If she was suspicious of others, as I was, then she'd only gather trustworthy people to deal with that underside. See? Kimiyoshi and then Rika here. The first people that came to mind were the leaders of the three families. Leaving Rika-chama out, the head of the Kimiyoshi family was a strong possibility. He was the only one who could advise Empress Sonozaki. They were a similar age and everyone knew that they were very close outside of family councils. Furthermore, as the mayor, he often went to the Sonozaki house just before the Watanagashi to discuss festival preparations. I could easily picture them talking privately. The one who executed the curse of Oyashiro-sama, the one who murdered Takano-san and Tomitake-san, the mastermind behind a series of the mysterious deaths that had been going for the past 5 years. Was he coming after me? Did he get to Satoshi-kun? When I thought about Satoshi-kun, I felt elevated. I was fearful of the possibly being this year's victim until just a moment ago. I was scared that X was after me. But when I thought about it, I realized whoever it was, this person had gotten to Satoshi-kun. I looked so hard, but I couldn't find him. I'd almost forgotten about this enemy. For better or for worse, he was going to appear before me again. No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't find that enemy. But now he was trying to find me. That was it. I wasn't only being chased, I was chasing too. When I realized all this, I was no longer afraid of dying to the 50 years curse. It had become a game. I wasn't only being threatened, I was threatening too. Now was the time to settle the score for Satoshi-kun. Now was the time to awaken passions that had grown weak over the past year. I could feel righteous indignation and the courage flare up within me. The only emotion that can defeat fear is anger. When my anger completely overtook my fear, I felt as if I were reborn.
鬼ババ様、そろそろ目を覚ましてくださいません？
Empress of Hags. I kicked her wheelchair rather violently, but that didn't wake her up either.
ひょっとして眠ったふりをしてやり過ごそうとか考えてません？
Maybe she died already though, because of the shock of that stun gun. I grabbed her hair and pulled her head up. But even then, the hag stayed silent with a straight face. Then I noticed something. I looked for an appropriate torture device. They were all large scale and none of them being particularly handy. That's when I saw a cigarette lighter on a cushion in the tatami room. One of the relatives must have left it there. I lit the lighter. A huge flame appeared. I turned the lighter off and went back to the hag with it.
見えてます？見えてない。これ誰の忘れ物かわかりませんけどね。ライターです。
I lit it in front of her eyes.
今からこれであなたの鼻を焼きます。嫌でしょ？私も嫌です。ですから寝たふりをやめてください。
There was still no response. Okay, I feel like she died already. I put the flame right under her nose without hesitation. The tip of the flame touched the tip of her nose. The flame must have burned her nose hair. It smelled terrible. I was already certain, but I continued anyway. I brought the flame closer to her eye. Her eyelids didn't move one bit. The flame burned her eyelashes, making it smell awful again. I turned the lighter off and then felt her throat and wrist. I didn't feel any warmth. I didn't feel a pulse either.
こいつスタンガンで死んだ。
And she's very old. She definitely died from that one, from the shock of it, yeah. There was no way she could pretend to be asleep while being burned. Even if she could endure the pain, anyone would reflexively move their eyelids if a flame close to their eyes. But she didn't. I turned the sink water on and aimed the end of the hose at the hag's face. The water pressure wasn't too high, but by squeezing the tip of the hose, I could make it squirt out. The water hit the hag in the face, but there was still no reaction. You've got to be kidding me. She's dead. The one who was the center of everything is dead now. I knew she wouldn't talk, but I didn't expect her to end up dead. I'd never even thought of killing her. I walked around the room restlessly. I didn't feel guilty, but instead I felt frustrated with what I've done. Come on. I need to calm down. What do I need to be afraid of? Calm down and stay cool. Calm down and stay cool. I could feel my brain starting to calm down, and my emotions cooling down with it. She was my true enemy. It was just that I killed her before confronting her about it. Sooner or later, I would have killed her anyway. She wouldn't have said anything in the first place, so there wasn't really a reason why I should have let her live. I didn't realize that until now, and that was why I got frustrated. My revenge for Satoshi-kun started with the unexpected death of my grandma. It was such a strange feeling, like I was wearing sopping wet clothes. I replaced that feeling with anger. I couldn't forgive her. I couldn't forgive the hag for abusing the Hojo family, including Satoshi-kun. For so many years, she cornered him psychologically as well as physically. She didn't deserve an easy death from a stun gun. I picked up a whip that was hanging on the wall. The whip was designed to make sure the person on the receiving end got seriously injured. So I swung it up and down. The sound reminded me of when I was a child hitting things with a jump rope I pretended was a whip. But unlike then, I'd made a purple mark on the hag's face and the reddish black blood started oozing out. Ugh. I swung it up and down again. The time the whip hit her head, her hair flew in the air. Shion, it's over, just stop. I saw a bunch of her hair on the tip of the whip. At the end of the bunch of hair, there were a piece of her skin. Seemed the whip had ripped part of her scalp off. Jesus. I continued to hit her with the whip. I didn't bother removing the hair beforehand. The tip of the whip was divided into many points, with each point having a fish hook on the end. Those hooks added to the speed of the whip and not only scratched the victim but tore her skin off as well. The hag's hair was all messed up and her face was getting bloody. She'd started to look like a real demon. I stopped the whipping. Not because my arm was tired, but because I couldn't stand the feeling of her hair on the tip of touching me every time I swung the whip. I threw the whip at the hag. Breathing heavily, I realized I was covered in her hair. It almost felt like 1,000 maggots crawling all over me. I brushed it off violently.
思い知ったか、鬼ババ。
I put my hands on my knees and exhaled roughly. It was then I noticed it. I perked up and turned around. There it is. The person who had been watching me. Since I snuck into the shrine storage, I sensed this person sitting in the tatami room. It enjoyed watching me torture my grandma. An overwhelming emotion started to swallow me up. I tried desperately not to feel it.
いつからそこにいたんだか。言ってくれればよかったのに。
It was just there. Just like Satoshi-kun, it was just there. It was extremely uncomfortable to have it just be there.
そっか。レナが言ってたもんね。あんたお社様ってのは。
I smiled boldly, and yet I could feel my body shivering.
冗談じゃない。あんたがお社様で、たたりは本当にお社様のたたりってわけなの？バーカ！誰が信じるかよ！え？
It was just my imagination. It couldn't be the curse of Oyashiro-sama. The curse couldn't be real. Everything was done by humans, so they made everything look like it was a curse.
まあ、あんたが見たいってんなら勝手だけどさ。私は見物料を取るつもりもない。でも、私の邪魔をしようってんなら、あんただって容赦しないよ。
No matter what I said, nothing happened. It was like trying to communicate with an insect. I felt like I was staring at the spider in the middle of its web, and the spider was staring back. I turned to the hag in the wheelchair. I couldn't leave her body here forever. If I don't need to make her death known, then it should be quick, and it's best if a body doesn't exist. Not even the secret underground torture room. I exhaled and to try to calm down or to calm myself down. Oh. I remember now. When I was a little girl, Kasa used to love making me feel scared, so he often told me scary stories about various horrible things. I recall the story about the secret torture room of the Sonozaki family. According to the story, there was a well in the torture room for dumping bodies in. There was a pile of tortured corpses at the bottom of the well, and resentful moans could be heard echoing from there. And about halfway down the well, there was a different tunnel, which was a secret passage leading into the distant mountains. That bit was from Mion's telling me the story. It was probably an amalgamation of telling from different relatives. The room was supposed to be a huge secret, but everyone got loose lips at the chance of fun scaring the young successor.
ミオン、昔親戚の誰かが言ってたじゃん。この地下拷問室のどこかに隠し井戸があって、外へ出られる秘密の通路があるって話。さっきの音は聞こえてなかった？鬼ババを鞭で叩く音。
Mion didn't reply, but I saw her bite her lip.
大丈夫。あんたは叩かない。でもね、あんたが不愉快だと鬼ババをもっと叩くかもしれない。今度は鞭なんかじゃなくて。そこの奥。暗がりにも牢屋があるでしょう。その中。
Neon pointed weakly. I walked down to where her finger indicated. A light bulb lit up the cell. It was a lot smaller than the one Mion was in. It was very shallow, and I didn't even need to open the door to see how tiny it was. Of course, there's no well in there. I became angry, assuming that she lied to me, but after considering it, I didn't actually think she would. At this point, I opened the door and walked in. Wait, what? I noticed something immediately. There was an opening right in the middle of the cell. The opening was naturally disguised. The way the rocks and the shadows were positioned perfectly hid the well. The tip of the rock inside the cell concealed the entrance. Unless you went in, you never noticed. But it was such a shallow cell that nobody would even think of going in. Besides the bars, will allow you to see the inside well enough. The cell is not even a few meters deep, so it would only take a glance to see everything. Nobody would think of unlocking the door and walking in. But walking in was the only way anyone could find the well. Furthermore, there are many cells in this huge cave. Who'd think that one of them was hiding a secret well? The inside of the well was dark, so I couldn't see anything. But every little noise I made produced echoes, so I could tell this was a very deep well. I brought a flashlight from the torture room and shone it down the well. It almost looked more like a vertical tunnel. I obviously a man made one at that. There were wedges on the wall like a ladder, and they looked as if they were inviting me to descend. It's kind of ironic that the secret escape route from an underground torture room ended up being a well that takes even further down. You had no way of knowing whether it would take you to freedom or to hell. Furthermore, there were the tortured bodies of the past victims at the bottom. Who would be able to go down this well without hesitation? Nobody in their right mind could go down this well to look for a secret tunnel, hearing the voices of the dead all the while.
ミオンはあの井戸降りたことあるの？降りたくもない。それに関しては著しく同感。この拷問室の犠牲者たちが放り込まれた井戸になんか好き好んで降りたくはないもんね。
I went back to the torture room and then returned to the cave, pushing the wheelchair containing the hag. Mion screamed.
シオン、バッチャー落とすけ？落とすんじゃないよ。捨てるんだよ。もう死んでるしね。さっきの拷問で死んだんじゃないよ。多分鬼ババはスタンガンで死んだんだよ。心臓麻痺とかで。放置してもいいけど、 虫が湧くと嫌でしょ。
ひどい。
なんなら死後の鬼ババの世話もする。湧いてくるウジを箸でつまんで捨てるとかやってみる。
Ooh. Mion covered her ears and shook her head. Everything I said seemed to bother Mion. Her own life wasn't guaranteed at this point.
シオン、どうしてこんなことを。
さーて、どうしてだと思います？
Nobody said anything for a while, but the silence was soon broken.
サトシ、敵討ちってこと。
敵討ちになったかもわからないけどね。いきなり後ろからバチンだったから、何が何やらわかんないうちにご臨終だったろうし。ねえミオン、今こうして思い返すと、私はやっぱりばあさんを殺すだけの理由があったように思うの。なぜかわかる？単にサトシ君を殺した張本人だからってだけじゃないよ。それは嘘をついたから。
I slapped the hag's head.
あんたも言ったよね。私が爪を剥がせば全て許すって。だから私は爪を剥がしたんだよ。3枚も。それでけじめがついたってことになったんだよね。でも約束は守られなかった。サトシ君はやっぱり消されてしまった。どうして？どういうことなの？
I continued to slap the hag's head. Her blood was all over my hand by then and it felt gross. I tried to wipe it off on her clothes, but then her hair got on my hand. So I ran to the sink in the torture room and then washed my hands with a brush. When I was done, I went back to Mion's cell.
あの時、サトシ君がいなくなってしまった後、あんたが来て言ったよね。サトシ君と私の関係は、けじめがもうついてたって。そしてこうも言ったよね。サトシ君の失踪の理由は、園崎本家は何も知らないと。
うん。
嘘だ
Here comes the usuda, the lies. Just like Rena. My shouts echoed throughout the cave. I was breathing heavily. I felt like I used up all the air in my lungs.
あんたが何も知らないのは本当だと思う。あんた自身、ばあさんに真の意味で信頼を得ていたかは怪しいからね。でも、ばあさんが本当に私のけじめでサトシ君を許したかはわからないよ。アマちゃんのあんたに本当のところを打ち明けるわけもない。
The hag didn't keep her promise. She said she'd forgive everyone, but she lied. She didn't forgive Satoshi-kun.
嘘つき、嘘つき、嘘つき、嘘つき、嘘つき、嘘つき。かの返してサトシ君、返してよサトシ君、返して返して返して返して。
I kicked the hag's leg repeatedly. Each time I kicked, the wheelchair made a squeaky noise. I ran out of breath and kneeled down. Mion was still covering her ears and was now shaking, so there were tears in her eyes.
怖がらせちゃったね。ごめんごめん。ミオンがミオンの言うように何も知らなかったなら、ミオンはいじめないからね。安心して。でも、もしミオンも嘘をついていたなら仕方ない。その時はどういう目に遭わされても仕方ない。仕方ないよね。
Damn, that was very intense, man. What is happening? Oh, the tips. Okay, we're in the tips now. Tip section. Let's check it out first. 183. I wasn't planning to kill the hag so quickly. I was going to kill her anyway, but it was too soon. People would normally assume that the Sonozaki family operates as a hierarchy, but it's not true. It's actually more like a system of government. Several ministries stem from the main family, and each forms a hierarchy of its own. These ministries don't communicate with one another. The people who belong to a given ministry don't know what the other ministries are doing. That way, the Sonozaki family's dealings are kept perfectly secret. Of course, the most important people in the family govern several ministries. They know, of course, about their own ministries, and they know a little about the ministries their relatives run. But none of them know everything. There are ministries that work in the open, there are ministries that work unseen, and there are some smaller ones that Oreo runs herself. Mion seems to know about most of them, but she doesn't necessarily know them all. In fact, she didn't know about the curse. Considering the fact that the hag died before I could interrogate her is a huge loss. But I wish she didn't die so fast though, so yeah, Shion could have talked to her, right? 185. And maybe she could have revealed something. The head of the Kimiyoshi family was the one who called the main house most often after the 50th curse. My father called the second at most. My parents were still high in the hierarchy, but the steer caused by my mother's disownment still hung over us, so we got treated as outcasts. So the fact that my father received so many calls proved how much the hag valued us despite the distance at which we were kept, demonstrating her own two-faced respect for both sides of the coin. So my father seems to be in charge of the intelligence bureau. He reported police informations, gossip, and then rumors going around in the Yakuza business to the hag. He silences, steers, and distorts that information at her request. By the way, my servant Kasai is an old friend of my father's. That must be why Kasai knows many things. But I don't know if my father is involved in the curse's execution. My assumption is that although he gathered information on the police investigation about the case, he wasn't involved in the execution itself. The fact that my father and the hag have this close connection isn't widely known. People know that she uses his information network, but they don't look very far beyond that. In the same way, it's possible that the curse execution team exists under the hag's direct control, but people just aren't aware of it. Okay, so yes, we will end our episode there for today. But yes, yeah, confirmation, I suppose, right, that it was Shion in the second chapter, right? After the Watanagashi, it was basically Shion. All of the appearances of Mion was Shion. It was confirmed here. But damn, though, I think if Mion didn't how do I put this? Because Mion confronted Shion, right? When Shion woke up, right? And then she was trying to hear what Oreo and Mion was talking about, and then afterwards Mion confronted Shion, right? I think it's probably gonna happen still anyways, even if Mion didn't confront her like that. Because yeah, Shion is breaking slowly and slowly, but after that confrontation with Mion there, she really snapped, right? And then yeah, she used her stun gun on Mion and used it on the old hag, I suppose. And yeah, all of this happened already, right? So it will eventually happen anyways. I mean, even if they didn't have that confrontation earlier, it was bound to happen. But damn though, the grandma died instantly. I wish that we had a little conversation, I guess. Just even a little bit, right? With her. And she did not die instantly. So Shion could have talked to her, right? But I don't think though that the Sonozaki family had anything to do with Satoshi. I really don't think anything, yeah, I don't think that they had done anything to him. I guess that's why Mion doesn't know as well, right? Like she was like, I don't know. But this is gonna be, yeah, all the questions from the second chapter, like what is happening to them. I guess the next episode maybe we'll see Kimiyoshi, right? Kimiyoshi had gone missing as well, right? So maybe next episode Shion will go meet him. What did Shion do to him? How did Shion bring him? I guess here, right, in the Sonozaki house. That would be all so interesting, man. Damn, this episode. Like we see how Shion broke and started to be, yeah, crazy like this. So yes, we will continue this and do more of Higurashi When They Cry, Chapter 5, Meakashi, in the next one. So I'll just see you then, guys. Bye bye.